I pushed open the front door, suitcase still heavy in my hand, expecting the familiar warmth of home. Instead, I froze. The hallway was eerily silent, stripped of the usual clutter that made it ours. My heart pounded as I climbed the stairs two at a time, already sensing something wrong. When I reached my bedroom, I stopped breathing. The posters I'd collected since childhood gone. The trophies I'd fought for vanished. My desk, my books, even the dent in the wall from years ago, all erased. In their place stood neatly folded linens and a guest bed. It was like I'd been erased. And the worst part? My family had done it. My name is Kevin. I was 17 then, caught between the awkwardness of being almost grown and the desperate hope that my family would still see me. On most mornings, I woke before the rest of the house stirred. The early quiet was mine alone, a small sliver of peace. I'd pad barefoot across the kitchen tiles, cold and smooth beneath my skin, and put the kettle on. The faint hiss of steam was a comfort, like a secret rhythm that belonged only to me. Sometimes I'd eat cereal straight from the box, flipping through the notes I had scribbled for school or my travel plans, determined not to let the weight of family drama crush me. I wasn't the golden child. That title belonged to my older brother, Mark, the reliable, steady one who always seemed to please everyone. My younger sister, Emily, was the darling, the one whose laughter filled the house and made my parents soften instantly. Me. I was the in-between, stubborn, ambitious, too outspoken for my own good. If I wanted something, I had to fight for it, scrape for it. Like the trip. It hadn't come easy. My parents had scoffed when I first asked if I could join the school exchange program. Too expensive. Too much risk. Focus on your grades, Kevin. But I worked weekends at the grocery store, stocked shelves until midnight, and saved every paycheck. I hounded the program director until she squeezed me in last minute. By the time I boarded the plane, ticket bought with money they never thought I'd gather, I felt unstoppable. For once, I was stepping into something bigger than this house, bigger than the small box my family had drawn around me. That trip was everything. I saw cities that pulse with energy, met people who didn't know me as the difficult middle kid, and learned that I could stand on my own feet. I came home sunburned, sleep-deprived, my journal thick with scribbles, convinced that maybe, just maybe, my parents would finally see I wasn't a burden, but someone building a future. I still remember that last morning abroad. Standing by the hotel window, I watched the streets fill with bicycles and chatter, the smell of coffee drifting up from a cafe below. I promised myself I'd bring some of that life back with me, that I'd make them proud, even if it meant dragging their recognition out of them inch by inch. But home never really waited for me. At dinner, when I tried to share stories about the professor who challenged me, the library that seemed endless, the strangers who treated me like an equal, my father glanced at his phone. My mother nodded absently, focused on Emily's recital schedule. Mark talked about his internship. My words hung in the air like smoke, thin and invisible. Still, I clung to hope. I told myself they needed time. I replayed their distracted faces but softened the edges, pretending they were just tired. Deep down, though, a seed of unease had already been planted. Because my room, my sanctuary, my one corner of the world that reflected me, was the only place that listened. Every poster tacked crookedly to the wall was a reminder of my stubbornness. Every trophy on the shelf, no matter how small, was proof that I had fought and earned my way here. When I closed the door at night, it was like stepping into a space that finally said, Kevin exists. Kevin matters. I didn't know then that it would all be gone. That while I was away proving myself, my family was quietly rewriting the story of who I was. The first warning came quietly. It was 2 days after I returned from the trip. I'd left my suitcase half unpacked, too tired to finish, and had gone downstairs to grab water. From the kitchen, I overheard my mother talking on the phone. Yes, the room's almost ready. We've cleared most of it out already. Her voice was light, casual, like she was discussing groceries. I froze, the glass in my hand trembling. What room? My room? I told myself I misheard, that she meant the guest room at the end of the hall. But a sick knot coiled in my stomach. When I asked later, she brushed me off. Oh, Kevin, you always imagine things. Go focus on school. The second warning was harder to ignore. I came home one afternoon to find my desk drawers emptied. The notebooks I'd filled with sketches, travel lists, and essays were stacked in a box near the garage. My father was moving the desk itself, grunting as he shifted it against the wall. "What are you doing?" I asked, panic creeping into my voice. "Rearranging," he said shortly. "This space could be more useful." "Useful for what?" "It's my desk." He didn't meet my eyes. "Don't be dramatic. It's just furniture." But it wasn't just furniture. That desk had been my anchor. I'd done my first high school paper there, stayed up late scribbling story ideas, mapped out the travel routes for my exchange program. Seeing it shoved aside felt like someone had kicked a leg out from under me. I wanted to fight, but my voice faltered. He was taller, older, louder. I was just the kid who always pushed too hard, always ended up painted as the problem. So I swallowed my protest, carried the box to my room, and shut the door quietly. The final betrayal came like a blade. I had been gone for the weekend, visiting a friend. When I returned Sunday evening, the air felt strange the moment I stepped inside. The house was humming with a kind of forced cheer. Emily was laughing too loudly in the living room. My mother's voice was a pitch higher than usual. I went upstairs, dragging my duffel bag, and stopped dead at my doorway. The door wasn't even mine anymore. A new plaque, "Emily's guest room," hung crookedly, like a cruel joke. I pushed it open and staggered. Gone. Everything gone. The posters I'd saved up for. The photos pinned to the corkboard. The medals lined carefully on the shelf, erased. In their place stood crisp white linens, a vase of fake flowers, and a stack of neatly folded towels. It smelled like lavender air freshener, artificial and suffocating. I dropped my bag. What happened? My voice cracked, barely a whisper. My mother appeared in the doorway, arms folded. "Kevin, don't overreact. We needed the space. Your sister's piano teacher is staying with us for a while." My heart pounded in my ears. You turned my room into a guest room? Without telling me." "It's just a room," she said, her tone clipped final. "You can sleep in the basement for now. It's quieter down there anyway." The basement. Damp, unfinished, smelling faintly of mildew. A place where boxes of forgotten junk gathered dust. That's where they wanted me. I looked at her, waiting for even a flicker of guilt, of hesitation. But her face was calm, almost relieved, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. Something inside me cracked. I wanted to scream, to demand why my existence was so disposable. But no words came. I just stood there, the silence pressing heavy against my chest, and realized with a sharp, cold certainty, I had been erased in my own home. That night, lying on the narrow cot in the basement, I stared at the ceiling pipes. Water dripped somewhere nearby, rhythmic and cruel. My breath fogged in the cool air, and my chest tightened with every inhale. This wasn't about space. It wasn't about a guest room. It was about me. They didn't want me seen. They wanted me small, tucked away, easy to ignore. And for the first time, I wondered if my family had never really seen me at all. The basement became my world. At first, I tried to make it bearable. I swept the concrete floor, found an old lamp, and stacked my books on overturned boxes. I told myself it was temporary, that the guests would leave and my room would be mine again. But weeks stretched on and nothing changed. One evening, I heard Emily practicing piano upstairs, her notes drifting down through the floorboards. The sound was sharp, insistent, like a reminder of everything I wasn't allowed to touch. I sat at the desk I'd salvaged from the garage, trying to focus on homework, when my father's voice thundered down. "Kevin, can you keep it down?" I looked around at the silence. I wasn't even playing music. My pen scratched faintly against paper, nothing more. "I'm not doing anything," I called back. "Then stop stomping around. You're distracting your sister." I stared at the ceiling, a bitter laugh stuck in my throat. Even breathing too loudly in the basement was a crime. But the breaking point came a few weeks later. It was Emily's birthday. The living room had been transformed, balloons tied to chairs, fairy lights strung across the mantel, a cake layered thick with frosting. Relatives crowded the house, voices buzzing, glasses clinking. I lingered at the edge of the kitchen, plate in hand, watching the celebration swirl around me. No one asked how I'd been. No one noticed the hollow ache in my chest. Then my uncle clapped Mark on the back. You've got such a bright future ahead of you. Your internship at the firm, impressive. Your parents must be proud. My father smiled, pride swelling in his voice. Mark's always been dependable. He knows how to make use of opportunities. The words hit harder than any shove. I felt heat rise in my face. I had worked 2 jobs to pay for my trip. I had fought for every inch of independence I had. But in this room, none of it mattered. I was invisible. Then came the final twist of the knife. Emily, glowing in the center of it all, tugged her teacher forward to meet the relatives. This is Ms. Harris. She's staying with us for a while. We gave her Kevin's old room. He doesn't mind. Her words were light, casual, meant to be generous. But every eye turned toward me, some curious, some amused. Kevin's old room. As if I had died and left it behind. A cousin snickered. Guess you got downgraded, huh? Laughter rippled through the group. Not cruel, exactly, more dismissive, the way people laugh when something isn't worth defending. My chest tightened, my throat closing as I forced a smile, my plate untouched in my hand. I slipped out before cake was served. Downstairs in the basement, I sat on the cot, shaking. My palms were damp, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Their laughter echoed in my ears, growing louder until it was all I could hear. I wanted to disappear. But more than that, I wanted them to see, to feel the weight of what they had done. The next morning, I confronted my mother in the kitchen. Why did you let Emily say that? That it was my old room? Like I don't even exist. She didn't look up from slicing fruit. Kevin, don't be so sensitive. It was a joke. A joke? You erased everything I built in there. Everything that made me me. Her knife paused against the cutting board. For a moment, I thought I saw hesitation. Then she sighed, almost annoyed. Life isn't about clinging to posters and trophies. Grow up. Learn to adapt. Her words sliced sharper than the knife in her hand. And in that moment, I realized the truth. This wasn't just about a room. It was about identity, about being pushed so far into the shadows that even my family could pretend I was never really there. That night, lying awake in the basement's stale air, I knew something had to change. Because if I didn't fight for my place in this world, they would keep burying me until nothing was left. Sleep stopped coming. The basement was always cool, the concrete floor pressing its chill through the thin cot mattress. At night, pipes moaned, water dripped in the far corner, and the air smelled faintly of rust and mildew. But it wasn't the discomfort that kept me awake. It was the thoughts. I would lie on my back, staring at the maze of pipes overhead, replaying every word, every dismissal. You imagine things. Don't be dramatic. It's just a room. Learn to adapt. Each phrase circled like vultures, swooping down when I tried to close my eyes. I'd sit up, heart pounding, and pace across the narrow space, my bare feet slapping against the cold floor. Some nights I scribbled furiously in a notebook, angry lists, fragments of sentences, questions with no answers. Other nights I just sat on the cot, head in my hands, wishing I could scream loud enough to shake the walls. The laughter from Emily's party haunted me most. The way they had all nodded, chuckled, accepted the lie. Kevin's old room. It was the moment I understood how quickly people can erase you if you let them. But one night, exhaustion finally broke me open. I sat with my back against the cot, knees pulled to my chest, the basement air damp against my skin. My eyes burned from sleeplessness. For the first time, I whispered the question aloud. What if they're right? What if I don't matter? The silence that followed was unbearable. The pipes didn't answer. No voice from above reassured me, just that heavy, suffocating stillness. My chest tightened, tears stinging. But beneath the ache, something shifted. A quiet defiance rose up, steady and unfamiliar. No, if I didn't matter, I wouldn't hurt this much. If I didn't matter, they wouldn't have worked so hard to silence me, to shove me into the basement. People don't erase what's worthless. They erase what scares them. I wiped my face with the back of my sleeve and sat straighter. The thought pulsed through me, strong enough to steady my breath. I wasn't nothing. I wasn't disposable. I was a reminder of everything they didn't want to face. Ambition that didn't fit their mold. independence they couldn't control, a voice that refused to stay quiet. And maybe that was exactly why I had to fight. I thought about the trip I'd worked so hard for, the way I'd scraped every dollar, every hour to make it happen. I thought about the mornings I'd force myself up before dawn to study, the late nights shelving groceries, the exhaustion that nearly broke me but never did. That fire was still in me. Buried, yes, but not gone. The basement suddenly felt different. Not a prison, but a forge. A place stripping me down, burning away the illusions, leaving only the raw steel of who I really was. I started planning. At first, the ideas were vague. Should I move out? Could I even afford it? Should I fight to reclaim my room? Confront them publicly? I didn't know. But the important thing was that I stopped asking if I mattered and started asking how I would prove it. That shift, small as it was, kept me breathing. Over the next week, I kept a secret ritual. Every night before bed, I'd light the stub of an old candle I found in a box, its wax smelling faintly of vanilla. I'd sit with it flickering beside me, notebook open, and write one sentence. I will not be erased. Some nights I filled pages. Other nights, just that single line. But each word felt like a stone laid in the foundation of something bigger. One evening, after another tense dinner where my father bragged about Mark's successes and ignored my presence, I slipped away and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. My face was thinner, paler from the weeks in the basement, but my eyes were sharper. "You're not going to break," I whispered to my reflection. My voice was hoarse, but steady. Not for them. Not for anyone. For the first time since everything had been taken from me, I believed it. And belief, I realized, was the beginning of the fight. The first step was small, almost laughably so. I started keeping records. Every slight, every dismissal, every piece of evidence that showed how my family was trying to erase me. I wrote down dates, words they said, even descriptions of my room being cleared. I snapped pictures on an old phone, empty shelves, the plaque that said Emily's guest room, the basement cot where I slept. At first, I didn't even know why I was doing it. Maybe part of me needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that this wasn't just a bad dream I'd made bigger in my head. But as the notebook filled, I realized what it really was: a defense. A way to build something undeniable. Because words could be twisted, but evidence spoke for itself. The second step was harder. I went to the school counselor. My palms were sweaty as I sat across from her desk, the faint smell of coffee filling the office. She was kind, the kind of woman who tilted her head when she listened, making you feel like your words mattered. "They moved me to the basement," I admitted, my voice shaking. "They cleared out my room while I was away. And now, they pretend like it was never mine." Her brows knitted together. "That must feel very painful, Kevin." I nodded, but frustration surged. I didn't need sympathy, I needed action. She promised to reach out to my parents, to open a dialogue. But when she did, the fallout was worse than I expected. At dinner one evening, my father's face darkened. "You went to the school about us? You made us look like bad parents." I swallowed hard. I just wanted someone to listen. "You embarrassed this family," he snapped. "You think sleeping in the basement is suffering? Try paying a mortgage, feeding 3 kids. You're lucky we keep a roof over your head." His words landed like stones. My mother sat silent, eyes down, while Emily and Mark exchanged glances that burned with quiet judgment. That night, in the basement, I punched the pillow until my hands hurt. The setback stung deeply. I had tried to stand up, and it had only made things worse. But I didn't stop. I started spending more time at the library. The quiet rows of books, the faint hum of the heater, the smell of paper. It became a refuge. I researched legal rights for minors, read articles about emotional neglect, highlighted passages that sounded like me. I wasn't sure what would come of it, but knowledge made me feel less powerless. One afternoon, while thumbing through an old law guide, a librarian leaned over. She was a retired woman with silver hair tied back neatly, her glasses perched low. "You've been here a lot lately," she said gently. I hesitated, then admitted, "I'm trying to understand what I can do when your own family pushes you out." Her eyes softened. "You're not alone in that, you know. Sometimes the people meant to protect us become the ones we need protection from." Her words lodged in me like a lifeline. She suggested a local youth advocacy center. I almost didn't go. The idea of airing my family's betrayal to strangers felt humiliating. But one rainy afternoon, I found myself standing outside the center, my jacket damp, the smell of wet pavement thick in the air. Inside, I met a caseworker named Daniel. He was calm, patient, the kind of person who let silence stretch so you didn't feel rushed. I told him everything, my trip, my room, the basement. He listened without judgment. Then he said, "Kevin, what your family is doing is a form of exclusion. It may not leave bruises, but it leaves scars all the same. You have the right to stability and respect in your home." For the first time, someone framed it plainly. I wasn't just being sensitive. This was real. We began building a plan. It wasn't dramatic. No immediate court cases or dramatic rescues. Just steps. Documentation. Witnesses. Support networks. But my family caught wind of my meetings, and the backlash was swift. Mark confronted me one night in the kitchen, his voice low but sharp. "Why are you trying to destroy this family? Do you know how selfish you sound?" Selfish. My hands trembled. "You took my room. You all laugh like I don't exist. And I'm the selfish one." He leaned in, his jaw tight. "You've always wanted attention. That's all this is. Grow up, Kevin." I wanted to hit him. Instead, I grabbed my bag and stormed out, walking the streets until my anger cooled in the night air. The setbacks piled up. Family whispers, relatives taking sides, my mother's cold shoulder. There were nights I wondered if I was only making everything worse, if maybe surrender would be easier. But every time doubt gnawed at me, I opened my notebook. Page after page of evidence reminded me. This was real. This was happening. And silence would only let them win. So I pressed forward. I applied for part-time work again, this time tutoring younger students. The extra income meant I could slowly save toward moving out, even if it was months away. I asked Daniel about legal emancipation, about housing options. He explained the process, the risks, the waiting, but the very fact that there was a path lit a fire in me. Still, the hardest part wasn't the logistics. It was the loneliness. There were nights I sat in the library, surrounded by shelves, and wondered if I was building a life only to live it alone. But then I remembered the candle ritual, the line I wrote each night. "I will not be erased." It wasn't about winning their love back. It wasn't even about revenge anymore. It was about proving, to them, to myself, that I deserved space, dignity, and truth. And with each setback, each stumble, that fire only grew hotter. Because if they wouldn't give me a place in this family, I would carve out one in the world. It happened on a Sunday, almost exactly 3 months after the night I discovered my room was gone. My parents had invited relatives over again. Another dinner filled with chatter, clinking dishes, and praise for everyone but me. The dining table was crowded, warm with the smell of roast chicken and garlic bread. Laughter rose and fell in waves. I sat at the far end, half in shadow, my plate barely touched. My notebook, the one I had filled night after night, rested in my bag beside my chair. I hadn't planned to speak. Not really. But as I watched my father brag about Mark's job prospects and Emily's upcoming recital, something inside me tightened like a fist. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and insistent. Then my uncle, the same one who'd teased me before, leaned across the table and asked lightly, "So Kevin, how's life down in the dungeon? Adjusting well to the basement?" The table erupted in laughter. Even Emily giggled, her fork clinking against her plate. I froze. The words echoed in my skull. Dungeon basement. A joke to them, my reality. My exile. And suddenly, I couldn't stay silent any longer. I stood. My chair scraped sharply against the floor, silencing the laughter. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. My hands trembled, but my voice, steady, clear, cut through the room. "You all think it's funny," I said. "But do you even know what they did?" Confusion flickered across faces. My father's brow furrowed. "Kevin, sit down." "No." I pulled the notebook from my bag, setting it on the table with a thud. My pulse raced, but the words poured out. While I was away on the trip I worked months to afford, they erased me, cleared out my room, took down everything that proved I existed here, my trophies, my posters, even my desk. They turned it into a guest room and shoved me into the basement. And you've all been laughing about it ever since. A stunned silence. The air felt thick, heavy. My mother's face went pale, her fork frozen midair. I flipped the notebook open, showing photos, empty shelves, the basement cot, the plaque that read Emily's guest room. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. Look at what they did. I had to take pictures because even I started questioning myself. But this is real. They erased me in my own home. My uncle's smirk faltered. Relatives shifted uneasily in their seats. Someone cleared their throat. Emily whispered, "Kevin, it wasn't that serious." "Not serious?" My chest burned. Do you know what it feels like to lie awake at night wondering if you matter to your own family? To hear your mother tell you to adapt, while your father calls you ungrateful for wanting a room of your own? To be laughed at for being shoved into the basement like storage. Every word left me raw, exposed. But it was the truth. And for once they couldn't ignore it. My father slammed his hand against the table. "Enough. You're making a spectacle of yourself." I met his glare, my voice lower but sharper now. "No. I'm showing them the truth you've tried to bury." The room crackled with tension. Relatives glanced between us, uncomfortable, but none of them laughed this time. The silence was louder than their earlier jokes. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice brittle. "Kevin, you're twisting this. We did what we had to. It wasn't personal." "Not personal?" I let out a hollow laugh. "You took away the one space where I felt seen. You told me to grow up when I asked why. You let them all believe I was the problem." Her lips pressed together, but no defense came. For a long moment, no one moved. Then my cousin, quiet, usually distant, spoke softly. "I didn't know it was like that." The words broke the dam. Murmurs rippled around the table, uneasy questions, sidelong glances at my parents. The truth hung heavy, undeniable now that it was out in the open. My father pushed back his chair, his jaw clenched. "This conversation is over." But it wasn't. Not really. Because the silence that followed wasn't the silence of dismissal anymore. It was the silence of people seeing, even if they didn't want to. I gathered my notebook, my hands still trembling. My heart pounded, but beneath the adrenaline was something steadier, stronger, relief. For the first time, I hadn't swallowed the truth. I had laid it bare. And whether they accepted it or not, they could never erase it again. The house felt different after that night. Not louder or more chaotic, quieter. Almost brittle, like glass that might crack with the slightest pressure. No one mentioned my outburst directly, but the silence spoke louder than words. My father avoided me, his footsteps heavy as he moved from room to room. My mother busied herself with chores, clattering dishes and humming tunelessly, as if noise could cover the tension. Emily practiced piano more than ever, each note sharp, defensive, like a wall she was building. But the real shift came from outside. Relatives who once laughed at the basement joke stopped bringing it up. A few even called me afterward. Awkward, hesitant conversations, but different. My aunt said quietly, "I didn't realize how unfair it was, Kevin." "I'm sorry." My cousin texted me late one night. "I see you. Don't let them shrink you." It wasn't everything, but it was something. Proof that truth, once spoken, doesn't vanish. Inside, though, I felt both lighter and emptier. The confrontation had drained me. For days afterward, I carried the weight of it in my body. Tight shoulders, trembling hands, a strange hollow in my chest. But beneath it all was something I hadn't felt in months: certainty. They could deny, they could deflect, but they couldn't erase what I had said. I started spending more time outside the house. After school, I'd walk to the park, notebook in hand, and sit beneath the oak trees where the late afternoon light slanted gold through the branches. The air smelled of cut grass, earthy and grounding. Kids played on the swings, their laughter unself-conscious. Parents strolled by chatting. I'd sit on the worn bench and write, not angry lists anymore, but plans. Small practical goals. Save enough for a rented room by the end of the year. Apply for scholarships. Keep tutoring hours steady. Build something that couldn't be taken away. Sometimes I'd just sit and breathe, the quiet broken only by leaves rustling overhead. In those moments, I realized how badly I'd needed space not defined by my family. A space where my existence wasn't questioned, where I could simply be Kevin without apology. At school, teachers noticed the change too. My English teacher pulled me aside after class one day. "Your essays have gotten sharper," she said, tapping the page. "It's like your voice has weight now." I smiled faintly, unsure how to explain that my voice had always had weight. It had just taken being buried for me to dig it out. Back at home, things never went back to normal. Dinner conversations became stiff-clipped. My father spoke less, his pride in Mark's accomplishments more subdued, almost defensive now. My mother still insisted it wasn't personal, but her eyes darted away when I entered a room. And the basement? I still slept there, but it didn't feel like exile anymore. I'd lined the walls with my notes, my tutoring schedules, even the beginnings of an essay I was shaping into something bigger, maybe a college application, maybe more. The candle stub had burned down, so I bought a new one. Each night as it flickered, I wrote, "I am still here." The space no longer whispered of erasure. It whispered of survival. One Saturday, I walked through the house and paused at the door of what used to be my room. The linens were still crisp, the fake flowers still in the vase. Emily's teacher had long since gone, but no one offered to give the space back. I stood there for a long moment, hand on the doorknob, then let it go. I didn't need that room anymore. The shift wasn't in them, it was in me. I realized revenge wasn't about getting back the same space or forcing them to admit guilt. It was about refusing to disappear, about building a life so solid, so undeniable, that their attempts to erase me became the very proof of my strength. And in that quiet, standing in the hallway that once felt like a battlefield, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. Sometimes I wonder if my family even remembers the day I came home to find my room gone. To them, it was just a choice, a reshuffling of space, a convenience. But to me, it was the day I learned how fragile belonging can be, and how strong you have to become when it's denied. For a long time, I thought revenge meant making them regret what they'd done. I imagined loud confrontations, victories that would silence them. But life taught me something quieter, something sharper. Revenge can be as simple as refusing to vanish. I think of the basement often, the smell of damp cement, the sound of the pipes groaning at night. At first, it felt like a coffin, a place meant to hold what they didn't want to see. But it became something else. It became a forge. Every night I spent down there, writing by candlelight, every tear I swallowed, every moment I thought I couldn't take another day, all of it shaped me into someone stronger than they ever expected. Now, when I walk past that closed door, the one with the folded linens and the fake flowers, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel distance. That space doesn't define me. It never did. What defines me are the choices I made in the aftermath. To speak the truth, even when my voice shook. To keep writing, even when the page blurred with tears. To carve out a future, even when the people closest to me tried to convince me I didn't deserve one. If you've ever been overlooked, erased, or treated like you don't belong, I want you to know this. You are not the flaw. You are the fight. You are the proof that silence can be broken, that shadows can be stepped out of. I used to think my family took everything from me. But standing here now, years later, I see the truth. They didn't take my future. They handed me the chance to claim it myself. And that, I realize, is the sweetest revenge of all.